Hi, this is Jerry Jenkins. So something I like to do when I'm working is print out debug print statements or do logging, and a lot of times I want to know the context of where I'm logging from or where I put that print statement. So I'd like to know the line number and the file number. So this is how to get the line number and other source file context at runtime for some line you're on. So we're gonna be exploring a little bit of what's called the inspect module, and then we're going to also use the OS module to do work of just getting the file name by itself. So let's start. Let's look at the inspect module. So if you go to Python.org and you look up documentation, you can look up the inspect module, and it'll do a lot of things. It's basically the inspect module is responsible for examining your code while you're running, so you can go into functions and find out things, all types of information. So we're just going to use a couple of calls. One of them that's going to be the most important is called the get frame info, which if you pass it the current frame, which we're going to show you how to do, it returns a named tuple with the file name, which is the full path, the line number, the name of the function you're in, and those are the things we're going to be interested in. So let's go ahead and do our code. So we're going to start by getting the current frame. So you say some variable equals, and you say inspect dot current frame, and that gets you the current frame. Now we're not actually in a function, so if we got the function name, you'll see we'll just get a thing called module, and then we're going to get the information. So I'm just going to use I for information equals inspect get frame information, and then you have to pass it this frame we just got from current frame. So that gets the tuple in I, and we can print out things about it. So let's print out the line number. So line number is line NO, and when we run this, you'll see it says we're at line number 7. And we're running actually Python 3.6, but this works all the way up to the newest Python. And so that's it. So let's print the other information. So the ones we said we're interested in are the other one, which would be the file name, and the other one might be the function name. So if we run this, we'll get all that information. So it says line number 7. Notice line number 7 is where we called get frame info. So that's where it captures for the current frame what line number you're on. The file name, so it gives me my full path to the file name, and it's the source file in Python. And then finally it gives you the function name. Since we aren't in a function, it calls module. So let's put this in a function. So I'm going to use the famous function called foo that's used in a lot of programming examples. I don't know the history of that, but it's probably interesting. We'll indent all this. So now we have a function, so we have to call it. And let's see. So the only thing that should change is the line number, because we moved that a little bit, and it's going to change the name of the function we're in. So let's run it, and you notice that the line number 8, so it's 8. It's again where we call get frame info, and the name of the function is now foo because it sees, oh, we're in function foo. So that's the frame we're in. So this isn't very interesting because we want to actually find out this information for a line number anywhere in our program. So we want to create a function that we can call to do that. So let's change the name of this function, and we'll just call it line info, because we want to get the information of a current line. And we're going to print this out, and then let's call it here. That's not going to change anything, so we have to do one more thing. If we're inside this function, let me just do an extra inner here because I'm getting that curly brace because it wants more extra lines. Where we get the frame info, instead of getting the current frame, we're going to get what's called the previous frame, and that's a special thing called f underscore back. So the frame one back from the frame we're in is called f underscore back. So that's going to get the frame instead of the frame for line info. It's going to get the frame for where we called it. So now when we run it, you'll see it says we're in module, but it says line 15, which is where this is called. So let's actually put this inside of a function. So we have another frame. And we'll call that one foo. Well, let's call it foo2, since we already used foo. And then we'll call foo2 here. And we'll run it. And there we go with line 16. So we're at line, where we call line info is line 16 in the function foo2 and in this file. So now to be useful, let's do it a little different here. So instead of printing it this way, I'm going to reorganize how I print it. So I'm going to print the file name, and I'm going to do a formatted print. So let me add that, and I'll remove the other ones. Print F string, and I'm going to, in curly braces, I want to print I dot file name, and then I'm going to follow that with a colon followed by the line number, I dot line number, and then I'm going to put a couple spaces, and then we'll put called from, and we'll put the function name, I dot function. And then we can remove these three print statements. So now when I run this, it does something interesting. It turned this blue in PyCharm. It doesn't work in all IDEs, but a lot of IDEs will recognize when it gets an error that tells you the file name and the line number, it'll make it a link, so when you click on it, it takes you to where in your program that happened. So it takes you to that context. So notice it took me right to where I called line info. So this is a way you can define a standard function that when it prints out information, in fact we could pass it a message, and you could concatenate a message at the end. And maybe you call this and you say error detected here, and so when you run it, so you can get creative and you can create something that's going to work for you, that's going to give you the current line number. And if you just want the file instead of the whole path, that's where the OS is. So the last thing I'm going to do is type os.path.base name. That is a method you can do that's part of OS path that will take off all the prefix for where the file is and just give you the file name. So we'll run it one more time. So it just gives me the file and the number, and then our message, and also the function was called here. So this should be useful. I hope you can use it for something. I'm working on a little module that I'm going to add to PyPy next week, which you should be able to do this, and it'll define this for you, and it'll be a little bit more useful. It'll have some standard formats for you. So that's all. I hope you enjoyed this video.